It has been a hot minute since I made a video. Life's just kind of been up and down ever since getting hurt down here at the Ben site this harvest season. I'm slowly starting to feel a lot better. A lot of the swelling's coming down. Starting to feel more and more like myself every day. And today I want to jump on here, make a video, get you caught up to speed on how the rest of the harvest season went after I wasn't able to record, and get you caught up to speed on where the farm's at today, the first week of December. For starters, as you can see by the barren fields around the farm, all of the area's crop has been gone, has been harvested for about the last month. Thankfully, my older brother Matt's come home. He helped a lot of my family's farm during harvest. So now we have all of our grain bins here at the main farm completely filled up with corn. Corn's in all these back ones, corn's in these three. And then over here are two large bins. That one's completely full of corn, and this one has about 50-some thousand bushels of beans in it. Unfortunately, the reality is with all the rain and water that we had that last week of June, if you saw some of our fields replanted roughly 200 acres of soybeans. I came back out in all of those fields, replanted soybeans the second week of July. Those beans only produced about 10 to 15 bushels an acre, which wasn't much. So we do have another larger bin of this size over at another farm, but because of all the drowned out spots on the corn acres, we didn't need to fill up that bin. So all of our grain this year at the farm is right here at the main farm site. Which is one benefit of having a shorter crop, is that now with all of our grain here, we won't have to move trucks, move augers to our other bin site to unload. But the downfall is we didn't have as many bushels, so we're not gonna get paid as much. So tomorrow we're gonna start selling some corn, taking some corn out of this bin here. So I need to get everything ready on that. Corn's pretty well peaked up in this bin. Good looking grain. We're just gonna empty out a few loads out of this bin, that bin, that bin, and that bin tomorrow. The goal is we want to haul in, or we're going to be hauling in about 30,000 bushels. The thought is we don't like to have the grain peaked up that high all winter long. Sometimes when it's up that high, snow gets in there and it starts to build chunks and get moldy. And we also want to move some corn to town just because it makes it easier logistically rather than hauling it all into town next summer. Spreads out some of our risk on pricing. Now we'll look inside the bean bin. Bean bin isn't quite as full as the corn bin is. Unfortunately, in here there's a bunch of pods, and because of how dry the season ended up, the beans aren't terribly large, but still bigger than I would have expected. No mice. It's a good sign. Usually there's a bunch of mice scurry out of these things when we take them off. Just put them on. That way the sun doesn't get to the motor as much, keep it out of the elements. But we should now have everything ready to go down at the bin site. Took the probes out of all of those 4 bins we're gonna be hauling out of. Really doesn't take much to set up since they're all hooked up to the leg, so we won't need to set up any augers or anything. I will be curious to see what the moisture is coming out of these bins, because it was super dry end of harvest season. We only ran like a few bushels through the dryer, so I think most of the grains are gonna be like 13% moisture when we're taking it out. We'll see what it is, try to blend it off. That way we can get higher moisture content overall on our contract. Now I'll continue along, giving you guys a tour more up to date as to how the rest of the harvest season went. So as one season ends, which was the 2024 growing season, the next growing season begins. And that's what you can see inside of this shed. We have a bunch of soybean seeds that are gonna be planted in 2025, already getting filled up in here. These start to come in literally 2 weeks after we finish combining, because all the cleaners start to finish cleaning all the beans. So inside each of these bags, these big white bags, that'll be enough to plant about 40 acres of soybeans, which is the exact same as these big black totes, can plant about 40 acres of soybeans. That's basically all we have inside this shed. Now bringing it over to where all the equipment's parked right now. Now we're inside the big machine shed where we have parked away a lot of equipment. The planter, field cultivator, the chisel plow, which interestingly enough, this is actually the first time in 3 years we've ran the chisel plow. you know, this is story time. So the reason that this is the first year in the last 3 we've ran the chisel plow isn't because we haven't chisel plowed the last 3. It's because the last 3 years, or 2 years, I should say, the last 2 years, we've used John Deere's autonomous tractor and autonomous chisel plow on all of our soybean acres. And this year, unfortunately, we weren't selected to have their autonomous tractor, but that thing is awesome. I mean, to have the cameras on the tractor, to see it and to be able to control it from your phone, and to see the real life future of agriculture play out on my personal farm as a demo farmer the last 2 years has been super cool to see. And like I mentioned, unfortunately, it wasn't in the cards this year, and honestly, thankfully it didn't happen because I got hurt and wouldn't have been able to manage it very well. But it's cool to see what the future of agriculture is when it comes to autonomy. And I'd be curious what your guys' thoughts are on that down below. Curious what you think, if you think it's a benefit to farmers or if you see it as a threat to farmers. Carrying on now over here, seed tenders. Here's our ripper, which we broke a lot of pieces off, I know, this fall. I didn't personally get to run any of this tillage stuff this year just because I wasn't supposed to be bouncing along in a tractor, but I know we broke a lot of points, bolts, just a lot of things on here because of how hard the ground was. Because of that lack of moisture, obviously, these last 2 pieces of equipment haven't been power washed off. Probably gonna wait till next spring. Over here we got our 8285R. Take you back outside where Dad's out there power washing off the rest of the equipment before we park it back in here at the end of the day for the winter storage. So that's the Cliff Notes version of everything that went on here at the farm this fall after I got hurt. There was a bunch of stuff that broke on the leg, the combine, you know, stuff that makes good content, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get that. But I'm excited to tell you and show you this next thing for next year. So last year on our farm, I was farming just a percentage of all the acres that we farmed. So my name was on all the fields, and you know, it wasn't a bad thing, but myself, I have different thoughts and different things I want to do on fields in comparison to what my dad wants to do on his farms. So the exciting thing is next year, what I'm going to be doing is this right here is a 240 acre field that I'm going to be planting into soybeans. And next year, this field is going to be all mine. And honestly, I'm super excited about it because number one, this will be the first time in my farming career I'm able to actually make my own decisions. So now I can make my own decisions of seed, chemical, fertilizer on my own personal acres, where when I was just farming a percentage, you know, I was just writing a check out for my percentage. So that is one thing I'm really looking forward to. And secondly is there is a very small percentage chance that I would be able to farm this 240 acre field without the help of my parents from using their equipment. But the cool part is they still need my help for all their other acres. So rather than me paying for equipment, buying my own equipment, I'm able to use theirs in exchange for the labor that I'm providing to them on their acres. So all season long, I plan to keep a list of how many hours I'm working, what the actual expenses would cost me if I had to go out and rent a digger, rent someone or pay someone to plant my fields, pay someone to spray, pay someone to combine. I'm gonna be calculating that all season long on my acres, but thankfully, this field's just soybeans. I'll take you to the back, show you one thing I'm concerned about on this field before we go ahead to the field of corn I'm gonna be having for next year. Out here in the middle of my 240 acre bean field for next year, and you can see there is a lot of bare dirt that doesn't have a lot of crop residue on it, and that's because, as you can tell, there is a solid streak line there of, this is all the crop that drowned it out with that big heavy rain in June, and we replanted beans in July and didn't leave much crop residue out here. Now if I walk over here where the corn didn't get drowned out this summer, you can see there's drastically more material. And the benefit of this is all this stalk material and root matter is gonna hold the topsoil in place over winter, and it's not gonna be prone to blow away as easy as it will in this 20-30 acre patch where the corn all drowned it out. I did learn a lesson though, looking back to last year, replanting all those soybean acres that drowned it out there at the end of June and replanting them in July. It wasn't the thing to do. mean, I mentioned it before, the beans only made about 15 bushel. Thought maybe there's a chance for 2025, hopefully get that return on investment, but the cost of diesel fuel, the cost of labor, the wear and tear on the equipment, looking back, that wasn't the thing to do. Probably should have just seeded in some rye or oats and then worked it under, but you live and learn. So hopefully next year don't have that big rain, because this is going to be 100% my field, so don't need that here. But now I'll take you guys to the cornfield I'm going to have for next year. The darn previous tenants didn't get out all the rocks, so unfortunately still going to have rocks we're going to have to pick out here too next year. And welcome to my second field I'm going to be having in 2025. This is a 160 acre field. Obviously that doesn't include the road, and there's a little bit of a waterway on the one end, so maybe about 150 tillable. One thing nice about this field, it's a nice and flat field. This field's gonna be all corn, so I'm gonna have the one field of beans and the one field of corn. Now obviously I will not be doing any field operations out at either of my two fields. Those are the only two fields I'm gonna have next year. Roughly 400 acres for at least the next 4 months, which gets us to next April. But that doesn't mean there isn't things I need to be doing now, planning wise, to get ready for next year. Planning for things like the seed, chemical, and fertilizer I'm gonna need out across my 400 acres. And because now is December, now is when the biggest cash discount I can receive as a farmer by paying forward on all of those inputs. And because I farmed last year, a lot of my money is tied up in grain, some of that corn I showed you at the beginning of the video. And I'm gonna be taking out an operating note or borrowing money from the bank, and I wanna show that process as well. And basically take you along all season long, how many hours I'm working, seeing what that transitions to paying my parents for the equipment, seeing what an actual custom rate would be. So it's gonna be a bit different on the videos, but I think it's gonna be a one-of-a-kind series of seeing how much I as a farmer pay to plant a crop and how I market all my grain season long, and eventually wrapping it up with harvest, seeing how much my crop yields and how profitable or unprofitable I can be farming on my own with the help of my parents of using their equipment and paying off that equipment with my labor. Looks like Dad's got just about every tractor cleaned up. Just doing the final wash, and there he is crawling under, getting the underside of the four-wheel drive, it looks like. If you can't tell, I'm pretty excited to, start planning and making these decisions for the next growing season. And mostly because I'm able to make the decisions on my acres and make different decisions than what my dad and my mom are going to be making on theirs in terms of all the inputs and all the outputs of marketing grain. And the next thing I'm probably doing is starting having those rent conversations, talking with my parents, seeing how much that rent is going to be due for each acre. Since I'll be renting the ground, I'll be paying all the inputs, just using their equipment in terms of my labor, or in payment of my labor on all their acres. So the easiest thing you can do to see basically what I believe is the first person to show all the planning that goes into farming on YouTube is to subscribe to my channel down below. And with that, that's all I got for today's video of High Tech Farmer. Thanks so much everybody for watching. We'll see ya in the next one.